Had an interesting conversation with a co-worker before my shift started today. They said, "So when are you retiring?" Which, yeah, I suppose is a fair question. You know, to be fair, you get to listen to me on the radio. Some people get to work with me every day. Some people are carrying a heavier burden than you are. But this links in quite nicely to the topic that I'm talking about with Jason Heale from the Maxim Institute, because apparently there is a looming crisis about to destroy New Zealand, in particular the economy, and it's partly my fault, because the answer to the question, which I didn't answer of my co-worker earlier today, is in about 10 years. In about 10 years, we'll be totally out of money when it comes to superannuation. Jason, kia ora, good morning.
Morning, Andrew. You don't look like you're 10 years away from retirement. You look like you're far younger than that, mate.
Instagram filters is my secret, Jason. just wanting to say. But yeah, looking forward to retirement. And, you know, this is a contract that I've made with the government. I'll pay taxes. You pay me to do nothing for the rest of my life once I hit 65. That's the terms and conditions. I've read the fine print. However, it seems like I may have started this race a little bit late. We may be out of money by the time I get to 65.
Well, that's, I think, the issue that we're looking down the barrel of. Actually, Treasury Chief Economic Advisor Dominic Stevens gave a speech last week warning on this, and he mentioned in that speech that Treasury has been kind of banging this drum since 2006,
Yep.
so almost 20 years, saying we need to sort this out. We need to make sure that we are planning for this, because in, I think it's by 2034, over 20% of the population will be over 65.
Myself included.
And that's what we call super aged population. I think that's a cool term, and there's nothing wrong with that per se.
Yeah.
It means that we're healthy, we're looking after ourselves, we have good quality of life, that we can live that long. But it is an issue in that 65 is the retirement age, and superannuation kicks in, and it's one of those things that's universally applied, and that lasts as long as, you know, you're alive.
Now, I'm very much looking forward to being super aged. I wonder what my superpower will be. However, will I get superannuation, Jason, or is that naively optimistic of me?
Well, in the political conversation at the moment, superannuation is like the untouchable thing. So you're pretty set up at the moment. If Treasury gets their way, I think there will be some changes to it, but I think at the moment it's pretty untouchable. You're safe in that it's universally applied, and no one wants to raise the age, no one wants to lower the payments, no one wants to do anything to it, because it's seen as one of those things that we need to do to look after our elderly.
Well, let's cut to the chase on this. It's got nothing to do with looking after the elderly. This is political suicide. I mean, Michael Cullen took a tilt at it, but that was after he had stepped down as a finance minister. Nobody else is brave enough to touch this one. Am I being too cynical on this one? Because, hey, if you don't want to get elected in next time, change the deadline for superannuation or fiddle with the details, right?
I think so. I think the catch-22 is that when you're living in a country or a nation where the population is aging and more people are getting close to that retirement age, more people are going to want to make sure that they get that retirement age benefit. And so if you say you're going to mess with it, then they're not going to vote for you and you're going to be kicked out. So it is a catch-22, because we need to do something about it. But with the people who are approaching that age, wanting to make sure that it stays there, and they're becoming more and more percentage of the population, you're stuck with that, I think.
Although the other way of tackling this is to change the percentages, I suppose. One way of doing that is making pregnancy compulsory. I'm not sure that would go down well. However, I mean, the problem is in part created by this old age bubble, as it were, but also for falling birth rates. That's equally a part of the problem. It's not all my fault, Jason.
No, that's right. That's right. Where our fertility rate has been falling. A colleague of mine noticed this for a few years. It held steady at 2.1 for a long time, and then in the last decade, it's gone down quite significantly to below replacement levels. And the difficulty is that every country in the West, I think, is facing the same decline in fertility, and it's hard to reverse. I don't think there's any country that's successfully seen it reverse. So that's a difficult thing. The other option, of course, is to have higher immigration settings, which is a way to bring skilled young migrants here. But the problem with that is that every country in the West now is facing the same problem. Declining fertility rates, aging population, inverted population pyramid, and therefore they're all looking to attract skilled young immigrants. And so what are we doing that's going to differentiate ourselves from the pack?
I'm hesitant to put specific ethnicities on this, but do you foresee a world where, well, the Western world in particular will be fighting over Filipino nurses and Indian construction workers? Will this be kind of like a bidding war in terms of immigration, saying, hey, we can offer you a better deal, perhaps on a larger scale than the fight for police officers and nurses between New Zealand and Australia?
I think it is going to end up being a global, particularly in the West, maybe so let's say a Western competition for who can attract the most skilled migrants and who can attract the younger families and things like that as well. I think part of the issue, though, is not just that we want to be practical about it. I came across this quote by an 18th century Scottish political philosopher called Alexander Tightland. He said that a democracy is inherently an unstable thing, because what happens is after a while the people find that they can vote themselves goodies from the public treasury. And then once they discover that, they just vote for the person who will promise the most goodies from the public treasury. So I think what we need is people who are kind of opposed to that, and they go, actually, I don't want to vote for something that's just good for me, but something that's good for the country, something that's good for the future. And that, I think that's a better solution, but it's a far harder one to come by. To train people to go, actually, let's think about future generations. It's much harder.
Training people to be less selfish. All the best with that, actually. And hey, maybe the way in which we need to adopt to this, because I mean, let's look to overseas. You said that not many countries have been able to crack this, but there are some strategies that are working, particularly in Japan. Dubai is another example, I suppose. They're saying, well, we've got the rich elite. If we want anybody to do any work, we'll just import them. That seems to be working for them so far. But, I mean, of course, it's changed the entire demographic of that society.
That's right. I think another country that's done quite well is Germany. They have brought in a lot of benefits for companies that will hire older people. But they've also invested in what they've called lifelong learning for people, retraining older people as well to keep them in the workforce for longer. They've done things like phasing out retirement so that companies can employ older workers to keep the experience around, but kind of phase them out into retirement so that that working kind of age lasts a bit longer. So things like that are helpful and are helping them to kind of bridge that gap.
Can I just jump in there, because I'm not sure how that's helpful. I mean, with self-interest in mind, as you were mentioning earlier with that Scottish economist. How's that helpful? Are you moving my finish line, Jason? Are you saying, oh, well, just keep working at Rhema until you die behind the microphone and then we won't have to pay you super? Or are you saying that, yes, you'll get your super, but you also might need to supplement that by working until you're dead?
Well, and that's the thing. I think one of my colleagues mentioned in a previous column, he did something on super as well. As a social investment strategy. And he suggested that maybe there's a way to do it where you means test and you go, well, if you can, because not everyone can do, the wonderful jobs that we do where we get to sit and talk for a living. You can't build roads or drill for oil or mine coal in your 60s and 70s. So maybe there's a way of means testing it. So that's, like you say, some people can, if they can afford to have a little bit less, they can. And again, I think it is this idea that this is for the good of others,
Yeah.
not just for myself.
Well-
I mean, that's a hard thing to combat. We always want to look out for ourselves, and so it's something we're going to have to work through.
I think we're just going to need immigrant road workers. Honestly, let the poor the road workers retire as well. You know,
Yes.
and bring some younger people into New Zealand to build our roads. They'll probably do a better job, honestly.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, this is a fascinating conversation starter. I recommend, start a conversation with somebody older than you about how we're not going to be able to, that their retirement is going to ruin our economy. The article published on the Maxim website a little bit later this week, maxim.org.nz. Jason, thanks for what you do. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.